Black Spots, written by Adam Valdivia. Have you ever noticed any black spots that seem to just appear in your home? If you do notice them, you need to leave your house immediately. When I found them in my home, it was already too late. At first, I was kind of terrified that it was some kind of deadly black mold, so I called out for someone to take a look. The specialist who came over was a nice guy. His name was Jonathan, and he was a professional. Jonathan came into my home, and immediately he noticed the black spots and began inspecting the areas. He had taken precautions and put on his personal protective equipment before he began taking samples of the polka-dotted walls. Jonathan stared at the wall and had a puzzled look about him. Despite him wearing his respirator, it was rather clear that he was confused at what he was staring at. He took a step back and began looking around, and after a few minutes moved back to the wall. Jonathan took a box cutter from his tool pouch and cut a square into the wall. He removed the square and examined it and said, "Huh, that's not right." I was intrigued and walked over to Jonathan. He noticed me coming over and said, "Hold on, bud. You should put on a mask and some gloves if you're going to be walking over here. There are some extra ones in that white bag near you. Help yourself." I walked over to the bag he had pointed and rummaged through it until I found what I was looking for. I put on the paper mask and blue nylon gloves. I proceeded to walk over to Jonathan. He looked over at me as I approached, and he pointed at the square he held in his hand. "This is strange. Mold doesn't look like this," he said, and touched the backside of the square. He lifted his finger from the square, and from it came this black, oozy substance. The ooze caked Jonathan's finger, and it appeared to be slick. The whole visual reminded me of used motor oil. "I'm sorry, I don't know much about mold, so I'm not sure what you mean. Well, that's strange. This whole thing seems foreign to me, you know?" I said. Jonathan chuckled, and he proceeded to explain. "You see, mold normally has a root system, almost like a plant. This, though, it's just all slime." He had this awe look of fascination about him. "When did you first notice the spots?" he asked me. I explained to him that at first it was just a couple of spots that I had seen while I was working in the basement. There had been a few summer storms recently, and unfortunately, my basement had been flooded from some cracks in my foundation. It was after I cleaned it out that I began to notice the spots, but I had treated the areas with bleach, as I was instructed by an article I found online. I explained to him that this happened a couple of weeks ago, and at first it seemed that the treatment had worked. But after the third day, I began to notice more and more spots. It had started in the basement, but had spread to the living room, which is where we were currently. Jonathan was fascinated by my story and asked if he could examine the basement. I told him, of course, and we walked over to it. The black dots lined the walls, almost as if it was leading us to the basement. The closer we got to the basement, the larger and blacker the spots grew. We reached the door and proceeded to go downstairs. As we did, a raw, almost iodine-like smell hit us. "Wow, that smell is new," I said. We continued down and I flipped the switch to turn on the lights. "Oh my God," we both said almost in unison. My entire basement was completely covered in the ooze-like substance. The room looked as if it was melting. "This was not like this when I called you guys," I said, baffled by the sight. Jonathan put his hand on the wall to our right and pushed against it. Jonathan's hand sank into the wall. When he removed his hand, a large glob of the wall came with it. "What in the blue hell is this shit?" Jonathan said in a frightened tone. I walked over directly ahead of us and pointed. "That's the spot right there, where I first found it." Jonathan dropped the ooze and approached the spot. He walked over, and as he grew closer, the wall did something that will forever haunt me. It began moving back and forth, almost as if it was breathing. We were both startled by it. Jonathan looked at me in disbelief. "I don't think this is mold." He walked forward cautiously to the wall, his hand outstretched ready to touch the pulsating wall. I protested against it, and I told him we should just walk away, but he was so very adamant about touching our newfound discovery. As he grew closer to it, I swear, the wall knew. Each step he took made the wall pulsate faster and faster. My stomach was in knots, and my mind was screaming at me to leave the room. Jonathan was close to the wall at this point, and as he drew closer, I began to move back. The wall's undulations were starting to become very violent, almost as if it wanted Jonathan to touch me. My feet were already on the steps. I was ready to get out of there. It's as if I knew what was going to happen next. Jonathan had reached his destination, and he took a deep breath, psyching himself up to touch the wall. But before he could even finish, the wall moved first. A fountain of long, needle-like spears stuck themselves into Jonathan's chest. He gave out a violent scream as they pierced him. The wall began to draw him into the black ooze. Jonathan's scream, muffled by the cocoon now forming around him, had been immediately cut short before I took my first step away from the scene. I knew he was going to be swallowed whole, and that's something I wanted to avoid myself. I ran to my car and locked myself in. I needed to get away from this horrible place. I turned on my car and I sped away. It's been about a month since this whole horrible mess took place, but it plays in my head as if it just happened yesterday. At first I couldn't sleep, as every little speck had me terrified. It's because of those thoughts that I had to seek refuge in nearby clinics, as they are so clean and it's easy to fake an illness. It seems that whatever it was that took Jonathan seemed to have forgotten about me. Maybe it was unable to move from the dungeon from which it had spawned, or maybe someone had found the menace and destroyed it. Either would suffice for me, but the reality is that it's probably still feeding to this day, and horribly enough, spreading its disgusting ooze throughout the city. Whatever the case may be, I don't really care anymore. I'm just so tired of running. It's strange though. Most hospitals have this clean smell of disinfectant, but this place, it smells like iodine. This clinic needs some new housekeepers though. All the walls seem to be really dirty. There's so many little black dots. Hi everyone, Ghostpaw here, and I'd like to take a second to say thank you all very much for watching. I also like to say that I appreciate you guys helping me out, subscribing and, liking the videos. If there's anything you guys like me to read, please give me something down in the comments below and I'll try my best to get a hold of it. I'm sorry it took so long again to put out this video. I've been really sick the last few days, almost a week. Again, thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate you guys supporting me. If you'd like to help the channel grow, please make sure that you leave a like, watch the other videos, give those videos a like, leave a comment, and hit that subscribe button so you can catch all my future content. And remember, Ghostpaw is always hunting, and he might just be hunting you.